everybody. How are you today? So we're going to do Pussy Willows today. I have my paper towel ready. So I just take a one sheet and I cut it into 3 or 4 pieces. So they're not really very big. If I look at the size of it compared to my brush, you can see it's just a little tiny rectangle. That's enough to do what I need to do to tap the brushes off or get out any excess paint. Or if I want to make clouds or something, that's just the right size to bunch into a little ball. And some brushes. I have a 1, 2, and a 3, and a 6. 6 is for the biggest one is for the outside edges. And colors, blue. I think I might use a cobalt blue. If you don't have a cobalt blue, cerulean blue is good. Ultramarine is good. We're going to go really, really light on the blue. So you'll see that there's a bit of blue in the sky. And when we get near the branches, it may look a little bit darker. But any blue is going to do. Ochre. If you don't have ochre, yellow and brown mixed together, more yellow than brown makes ochre. So not to worry. Someone had gone on earlier and asked me about ochre. How do they get ochre? If I mix yellow, I've got yellow and brown together. So there's my brown. If I mix the two together, more yellow than brown, so more on the yellow side. Then I'm coming up with ochre. So this is true ochre from my palette. And that's ochre made with yellow and brown. So we can mix and match, not to worry, not to think that you have to have the perfect colors. Play with the watercolors. They really do give you a lot of joy. And we need some water. So you'll need a couple of buckets of water if you've got those handy. And a blow dryer. So if you have a blow dryer, that would be helpful. What else do we need? Some paints, of course. And the paint colors are blue, ochre, red, raw sienna, and burnt umber. So it's like a terracotta pot color. And burnt umber is like a deeper brown. It doesn't have to be really deep brown, but just a little bit darker. Burnt umber. And when we're mixing, when we're painting on the actual branches or on the actual buds, that color might come out a little bit darker if there's another color with it. So we might do a little bit of blending as well. So all you were asked to do for this class was just to draw the branches. So if you've got your branches drawn just like this, just draw your branches. It's just branches that we drew. So if you just want to sketch out those branches on a piece of paper. We didn't need to draw the buds. We're going to paint the buds as we move along. So this will be a true watercolor that will just go right for it. So I'm just going to start and say thank you. I'm blessed that you have come on with me today and you trust me with your ability. Each week, I think people are getting a little bit better. So if this seems like a beginner class, go to the depths that you're able to. Make it an intermediate or make it an advanced class. Make it into whatever you need or want it to be. I don't want to limit you, but I do thank you again for coming on with me and trusting me. This is going into 3 years now that I've done this, and it's been such an honor and a pleasure to be with you. So we do have our card. I'm going to read it half time. It is about peace. So thank you, Monica, for pulling that card out. So I'll read the card. It's a reflection card, so for us to reflect on and just think a little bit about our life and where we're at. And today is Pussy Willows. It's the first, maybe second day of spring wherever you are. At least in Canada, it's the first and a half day of spring. So looking a little brighter out there where I am, hopefully for you as well. But we'll just get into art mode and we're going to do some deep breaths, but we've been doing deep breaths where I've said, lift your shoulders up, and that actually changes your diaphragm and does all kinds of crazy things. And so I'm just going to change my breathing technique a little bit with you. And we're going to breathe and just put your hand on your stomach. And when we are going to take our first deep breath in, we're going to breathe and actually push our stomach out a little bit. And take a real good deep breath. But look around, find something you like. Same technique, find something you like that gives you reason to smile. And but we're just going to take a really deep breath and really help our bodies. So we'll do that 3 times. So take a deep breath in, focus on something you like, give yourself a smile, feel really warm inside, really enjoy that feeling. And then release that breath just as much as you can. And then we'll go into our second breath. So we'll do that 3 times, and we'll just get into art mode so that we're here right now in this present moment and enjoying the state of artistry. So firstly, as I said, your hand on your stomach, deep breath in, and hold it for a second. Find something you like to smile about, and release. And our second deep breath in, and smile, and release. Feels a little bit different. Get a little bit more air in that way. Third deep breath in, and hold it for a second, and smile, and release. All the way out. We hold a lot of tension in our necks, so you can give yourself a little massage, just release some of that. And we're going to get right into our art class. So I'm going to change my camera. We're going to go, or I'm going to turn you, and we'll be looking at the canvas. So I have taped my canvas, all 4 sides with tape. Hopefully you have as well, because we're going to put a lot of water on there. Well, not a lot, but we'll put some water on there. So it just helps to hold that firmly. So I'm going to use my number 6 brush. So I'm just going to use my clear water. So I've got 2 buckets of water. One is just clean water. The other one is for rinsing my brush off. And I'm going to get my canvas wet. Hi, Lorraine. I'm just going to get my canvas wet, the whole thing. I'm going to go right over those branches. I'm just getting water on the whole thing. Now, if I have pools of water going on my tape, I can use my paper towel that I always have handy to dry off those edges. But I'm just going to get everything wet. So I'm just priming my canvas so that when I start to put paint on there, it's already ready and it's ready to start to flow. So I got a little carried away. I've got some excess water on the outside edge. I don't want too much pooling. I'm just going to tap that off with my paper towel. You can do the same if you need to. And when I'm looking at my canvas, if I tip it on an angle, I'll be able to see if there's any dry spots. So the light will shine where it's wet, but not where it's dry. So I can, at this point, go ahead and make sure I've got good amount of water where I've missed or where it seems to have gone dry really quickly. This one you can see I don't spend a whole lot of time worrying too much about all the perfection of the getting it on there. It's just a matter of getting it wet. And again, a little bit extra pooling at the bottom. I'm just going to tap that off. And I'm on an easel, so some of my paint might run. If you're on an easel, you'll find that it may run down. If you want to, you can lay it flat. Just so you don't have as much movement with the paint. But if you want it to move, you can leave it on an easel. We are actually going to move your canvas anyways. So now I'm going into cobalt blue. So it's up to you, whatever blue you use, cerulean, cobalt. So I'm just getting that paint on my canvas. So you see, I'm just doing a light coat. No, I'm not trying to do too much. It's going to blend because the canvas is wet. If there's lighter or darker spots, that's okay. I'm just getting that color on there. You can see it's really moving. So I've got a lot of water. And I'm just going from side to side. Just want to get those edges, get all the, even to the sides of my canvas. A little bit extra, it's a little bit light up there. And while it's wet, you can really play around with it. You can really fiddle with the paint. Once it starts to dry, then it's a little trickier, and you get something which I would call it like a cauliflower looking spot. If you've ever got that before, if your canvas is dry and you hit it with fresh paint, you'll need to really work in the edges. So now that I've got that on there, I'm actually going to turn it on its side. Let it run a little bit more. Just let that color run. And I can turn it on the upside down. Let it run a little more. You see it's still running. See just a little bit, you can see. It's just still moving a little bit. And I'm going to turn it on its other side. Let it run. Just see there, you can see it's moving. There's a little bit of paint right there moving all by itself. And I'm going to turn it back to right side up. Now it's still wet, but I wanted to add a little bit of red. So I can put red on my brush, but I want a watered down red. So I want more of a pinky red, not quite so heavy. And I'm just going to put some of that red just on the outside edge. So I might turn a little bit purple. That's okay because it's going to hit the blue, but some of that red will still show. And you see it's blending in really nice just because my canvas is still wet. And that ochre color that I talked about, the ochre, if you needed to make it, if you didn't have ochre, if you mix brown and yellow, more yellow than brown, it makes ochre. So this ochre color, I'm going to put a little bit of that ochre color just in my sky, just above. Now some of it might pick up a hint of green just because blue and yellow makes green. And I'm getting a little bit of that bloom, a little bit of that cauliflower look. So I'm just going to blend that with my brush. Just soften those edges. And I did turn it sideways just to let that run a little bit. I'm going to let it run the other way as well. And you can see with that little bit of shine up above, it's still fairly wet. So at this point, I'm going to mute, and I'm going to use my blow dryer and blow dry my sky. So this is my sky. Before we put any other colors on, it needs to be dry. So I'm going to go ahead and mute, and we'll be a minute or two to dry this up. So go ahead and take your time. Use cool to lukewarm air, and blow dried the whole thing. So you need it to be blown dry before we move on to the next process. So I'm switching from a number 6 brush. This is the brush I was using. You can see it has a number 6 on there, number 6 brush. I'm going to switch from that brush. I'm moving to a smaller brush. I've got a number 2, quite a bit smaller, number 2 on there. And I'm going to use ochre. I'm starting with ochre, and I'm going to paint the branches. So I'm going to paint every branch, every little stub, every little piece. I'm painting them all in ochre. So I'm using a number 2, which is a smaller brush. If you go beyond, don't worry. We still are going to put darker colors on, so you have lots of opportunity to adjust. But I'm just using ochre. And again, if you needed to make ochre because you didn't have it, yellow and brown makes ochre. So it's a light yellow and a brown mix, more yellow than brown. So just carefully if you can. Now these are branches, they're not perfect. So if you don't have quite a steady hand, this is a great project for you as well, because the branches do have lots of just little bumps and ridges in them. But we'll just take our time and go over each branch, just painting them ochre. So we're just painting those branches just in ochre. And with that pencil, it gives a nice little dark bit behind it. And see, some of that branch up there isn't completely straight, which is perfect for an unsteady hand. And if you notice, if you need to, I use my baby finger and just rest it on the canvas. I just rest it as I'm painting. I just find a dry spot. Sometimes that's a little trickier than other times, but I just find a little dry spot. And it just gives me a little bit extra support. And I'm not trying to do the whole branch from top to bottom in one fell swoop. I'm actually taking my time and doing little bits here and there, as long as they meet. And it doesn't even have to be perfect, because we are going to do some dark brown on top of this, which will give a nice dimension to the branches. So if you find you're holding your breath when you're doing this, take a deep breath. Just trust in the process. This is just a piece of paper or canvas if that's what you're working on. It's just a piece of paper. And sometimes a piece of paper just wants to be a piece of paper. It doesn't want to be art. We just have a nice full tree down the bottom. So these branches are just coming up off and into the sky. There's a lot of branches there to do. I'm still working with my number 2 brush, and I'm going into my raw sienna. My raw sienna is a red color, like a terracotta pot. So I'm using my raw sienna on my branches, and I'm not doing every single branch, but I'm just doing a few markings here and there, just to give a little bit deeper color, but I'm not doing every branch. I'm just adding another dimension to the branch just by putting this extra color on. You can see I'm not doing every inch of it. If I hold it close, you'll see there's still some ochre showing. So when the spring starts and the trees start to bud, the energy flows from the earth up into the branches and gives a reddish look. It just brings that forward. And the other color that we have is burnt umber, which is quite a bit darker. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this burnt umber, just a fine line. I'm not covering up all of my other colors, but I'm just adding some of that burnt umber onto the branches. So I have all three colors on that branch. So I'm putting this burnt umber just down along the side. So my branch is getting a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger. But I'm still allowing that red and the ochre to come forward as well. So if you are trying to make a brown color because you don't have it, if you mix red and yellow and blue together, you will come up with brown. So those are the three colors we already have in our picture, except we have ochre, but red, yellow, and blue together will give you brown. So believe it or not, we're at halftime. So I'm going to read the halftime card for those of you that are still painting. Keep breathing, keep painting, keep enjoying what you're doing. And I'll read the card. This is a reflection card. To experience peace does not mean that your life is always blissful. It means that you're capable of tapping into a blissful state of mind amidst the normal chaos of a hectic life. What were some ways you experienced peace during the chaos today? It was about peace. There you go. Thank you, Monica. To experience peace does not mean that your life is always blissful. It means that you are capable of tapping into a blissful state of mind amidst the normal chaos of a hectic life. That's by Jill Bolte Taylor. What were some ways you experienced peace during the chaos today? Well, if you have children, I smile, but if you have children, it might have been chaotic today, just every day. At first day, this is the second day back to school. It's always little bits of things that happen throughout the day. Now, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and we'll start with the pussy willows. So a pussy willow, and I'm just going to draw a pussy willow on my canvas, my blank canvas in front. So I have a branch. Actually, let's give it 2 branches. I have 2 branches, and I have a pussy willow. And a pussy willow, when it starts, it comes from something that's similar to an apple seed. So when a pussy willow is in that opening stage, those little parts of the seed are opening. And so they have this little split in the middle. And then the pussy willow, of course, is what's on top, is what we see with the little spots. But in order to come up with this, the seed needs to break. So even from this part of a branch, if the seed is split, the seed might split a little bit more on one side, heavy on the other side, but we'll leave the tops without putting anything on them first. So firstly, we'll go over the branches, and some of them aren't even quite open, so they can be just more bud than the actual. So they would only have a little top on them, just a little bit at the top. This one would have quite a full top for the pussy willow. It might be even bigger. So they're not all supposed to look the same, and they're not all going to be the same. Some of them, even if you had a pussy willow, some of them only have one side left of the seed pod because that's fallen off. So you would have a full pussy willow with just that little bit at the side. So we'll start, and we're using for that seed pod, that apple seed shape. We'll start with that. Where will I start? I'll start up at the very top, and I'm just going to do the little, whoops, a little darker, a little bit darker. I'm just going to do the seed pod, and you don't actually see the pussy willow at the very top. So
what color?
This is the burnt umber, the brown. And then we'll do another one at the side here. So there's a little bit of the seed pod, and it's just going to attach to that branch. I'll do another one, and it's gonna look a little bit funny for a little bit. Might look a little bit odd. Thanks, Lorraine. It might look a little bit odd at the first, but stick with it. And not every branch has one, so some just come right out of the side. And some are larger and some are smaller. I'm going to do a larger one at the side. And they're all just a little bit different. So maybe on this side it's bigger than the other side. So this is where your creativity comes into this, and that's only going to have one half. It's not even going to have the second part. Now on my little branch, they don't quite have pussy willows on them, but they do have just a little bit of a bud, just with the same color brown. They're just starting, just a few of them on the tips. That's all it is just the starting. So it's not actually going to be a pussy willow, it's going to just be a beginning of a bud. The same, I'm going to do the same process on this center little branch. I'm not going to make it into actual pussy willows, but I can even do a couple of little bumps out the side. We can add, you can embellish on it and add a little extra spots if you like. So they're just going to be starting, but not quite yet. And starting from the bottom, I'm going to put some big buds on the bigger branch, just a few here and there. And as I said, they're seed pods that have a little bit of an opening. That's how you see the pussy willow. And they don't grow right beside each other. So one would be here and one would be a little higher up. So they're not identical in where they grow. And moving up, I'm going to do some more. And it's just like a little apple seed that opens. And that's how the bud comes out. And I'll continue up the branch. And because this is so random how they grow, for us to have drawn all of the exact buds on, it just wouldn't look quite as natural. So I'm just going to put a little tap on the top of this. This one's not quite open yet on the end of that little branch. And then keeping on moving up, more of these apple seed shapes. Some bigger, some smaller. And remember, it's just a piece of paper, so breathe. Allow it just to happen. Another little bud coming from the far branch. So we're just painting the outside edge. As I said, it's just like a little apple seed, and some have a bigger side open, and some have, they only have half because part has fallen off. And they all don't actually have to have the flower on them. They could just be starting. And if you feel to just put in a couple of extra little branches here and there, that's okay. Go ahead. And a couple of little tips, a little starters at the tip of my branches. So there's lots of branches to do and lots of buds to put on. So take your time. We have lots of time still. So there's lots of branches, lots of buds to put on there, but just take your time. And if there are any that you feel are darker than you want, if you use a dampened brush and wet the actual bud that you've put on there, just with a dampened brush, you can actually lift off some of that color. So with a dampened brush, it has no choice but to move. So if for whatever reason some of those are darker than you like, don't panic. Water will move that paint. So see, some of those I'm just making a little bit lighter so you can see how we can do that change. So that's up to you. If they're dark, too dark, you can change it. If you're happy with them, then leave them the way they are. And then I'm going to shift to a 0 brush. So this brush actually has somewhere on here, you'll see there's a 0 on the handle. Maybe you can't see that. Just above my finger, that's a 0. So it's a 0 brush and very fine bristles. So by using the same color brown that I put on there before, if I lighten that color up just by using water, so I've taken that same brown and I've used water and just lightened that up. And on the end of my pussy willows, I'm going to use this lighter color, and that's where I'm just going to make these little dots that are the shadows in a pussy willow. So using the same color brown, just lightening it up with water, just going on to a pussy willow, just above it, and I'm just making really light dots that are the shadow of the pussy willow. So I'm creating that round bulb form. It looks like a little round flower or bud, but really tiny, tiny dots. And after I have that really light brown on the pussy willow, just going to let it dry for a minute. Just let those little shapes dry. A nice round flower. I just need to double check because it's tricky to get all of them. So just double check and see if there are any that you've missed. And once you have that lighter color on there, so you see it's a lighter color. Once I have that lighter color on and it's dried quite a bit, I can go back with fresh dark brown, but I'm using very, very light touch. So just touching a little bit here and there, just a few little marks. Not overdoing, just a few. And they can be little lines. They don't have to be just a dot. They can be a little line that goes out. So if you find you're clumping on your brush, you may need to go back and just rinse off your brush and get fresh color. And just the tip of your brush. And again, just take a deep breath. Just relax. It's just a piece of paper. And again, if there are any that you feel that are darker than you like, then go ahead and just use your brush with clear water. And just that paint has no choice but to move. So you can easily lighten it up just with clear water. And where we'll get a really nice effect with how this is framed is by taking the tape off. So if I take this tape off from around the outside, starting from working from the inside edge of the paper, whoops, the inside toward, I'm working away from the canvas. Always pull your tape off away from the canvas. And sometimes I say painfully slow, just so you're not disappointed at the end, because you can tear the paper if that's what you're using. So I'm going to take this tape off and then I'm going to sign it. So do remember to sign your art, and I'm glad that you were able to do this without pre-drawing everything. Here we have a realistic looking pussy willow, a group of pussy willows and a nice sky. Beautifully done.